thank you all so much for coming. I really do appreciate it. And I've been sitting here going, how do I follow up all of these wonderful, wonderful photographers you've just seen? And the best way for me to follow up is not to be like them, but to be a little different. So instead of telling you different ways to do imagery, I'd like to have you think about what you're doing when you do the imagery. So here are some, just to give you a little idea, of some of the work that I do. What you'll find is that a lot of this work is for me. I really truly believe that this work needs to be done, that you have to do the inner self. You have to find work for you to get better, to do it professionally. And so I'd like to talk to you tonight about light, shape, moment, and spirit. Light is our language. Without light, we have nothing. Shape, composition. One stems from the next, and you'll hear me say this over and over again. Moment, we look for moments. It's how we tell stories. It's what makes our pictures important. Spirit, you put all three together, and you start to imbue your pictures with a special essence that when you put all four together, it's a home run. This is a very old image. In fact, it's a film image. I probably shot it with a 304. I would bet with a f3. It's on, I think it's on Kodachrome, to be honest with you. But it's about design. It's about moment, so it's light, again, very early light. And this image helped lead me into a series that I still work on, and it's been 30 years. I live in a very rural area, and so I go out, and it's also an equestrian area, and I go out and follow hounds and horses. This is what I found one moment. But it also reminded me of something like a Japanese woodcut. I love art. And in fact, I'd love for all of you to think of yourselves not just as photographers, but as artists, because you are. You're looking for special images for yourself, for your family, and for the people that may want to buy from you. And now you'll see that I look for sort of the same things a lot of times. In this case, this was driving home from Maryland early one morning. I tend to like to compress my work. I tend to not like big, large fields, but compressed with more of a telephoto as opposed to a wide angle. If I tried to make this with a wide angle, I couldn't have done it. So instead, what this is, let's say, 8 images with a 70-200. Tiled together and then put together using the automate button. I'm not trying to do anything fancy and I'm not trying to fool anybody, but putting all of them together to get that moment, to get the compression that I needed. Because I'm standing on a bridge on Maryland 213 and this is out in the water. This is a little bit away. And I still think that it's one of my most successful images. This was me going to dinner one night, recently. Remember when the fires in California happened? And we had all that crazy sky? And how could I pass that up? Look at all the circles. Shape, moment, spirit, light. And I shot this every which way I could. It was, again, a 70-200 with a Z9. And the beauty of the Z9 in this case was, too, with the viewfinder low, I could go low, I could go high, I could move around. I'm trying to remember, I don't think that this particular image is one, but there's a focus stacking function on the Z9 that you can use. You're better off using it with a tripod, trust me. But I also did one of these with that. I just felt this was much more successful. And I just think it's a beautiful image. I'm in White Sands, New Mexico here, looking for light, looking for shape. It's 35 millimeters, one time when I'm wide. And how do I wander through? How do I see things? I look for pattern. Again, I've got shadows here. And how can I accentuate? The black and white accentuates it all. It's all a trip. And I'll tell you something funny about this particular trip. So we would walk 15 miles a day or so out in White Sands. And I came home and wound up in the hospital and had a quadruple bypass after this picture. But it saved my life. This is on Nantucket, back to that same sort of theme again. Getting up early. Fog is my friend. I would encourage you to think about that. Think about what fog does in terms of giving you the shape, giving you or taking away texture in the background. And then leading lines up, and then the punctuation mark again. Scudic Point, Maine. Without the sunrise, I had nothing. But when the sun came, I had a canvas. I think of my work many times as a canvas. All right, so here's my canvas. But I didn't have a player until I had the sun. And when I had the sun, now I have a canvas or a stage and a player, and so now I can have a performance. We'll move on to a little different subject. As Mike said, I'm a generalist. One of my jobs is as a magazine photographer. I also do weddings. So I have to do a lot of portraits. I have to find ways to connect quickly with my subjects. This gentleman was a vegetable vendor in Havana, Cuba. I don't speak Spanish. But in his case, we found some sort of a mutual bound, and I could chat with him, spent 5 to 10 minutes, and made this. And I've always loved the connection that we had. In Cuba, many times on these trips, your subjects may say, you can take my picture, and you ask them, my Spanish is awful, so I won't repeat it, but you ask, may I, in Spanish. And many times they'll go peso. A dear friend of mine is a gentleman named Peter Turnley. Peter is one of the finest photojournalists I know. He made the suggestion of, don't offer money, offer a small token that they might appreciate. So I carried a bag with me. With that bag, there were little army soldiers for kids that wanted to play. There were toothbrushes, there was toothpaste, pencils, that sort of thing. When I offered him a toothbrush and toothpaste, his eyes lit up. They can't, or he couldn't, afford that sort of thing. They couldn't get that in Cuba. That meant more to him than anything. And because of that, he offered me a picture. And that's something I want to talk to you about. Many, many times we talk about, and I will stumble over myself and say it, I took a picture. I actually didn't take the picture. I was offered it. It was a gift. And I'd love for you to think about the idea that you're being given a gift with these cameras. If you're going to do a portrait, if we engage, but I'm convinced that my picture is going to be awful, 9 times out of 10, that's what we're going to wind up with. But if we engage and I suspend that disbelief and I enlist you in that possibility that I'm going to make a wonderful image of you, guess what? We're going to have an opportunity to make a great picture, and that's a gift from you to me. So you're not taking the picture, you're being given the gift. But that comes with a responsibility. The responsibility is that you offer it back, that you give that same gift back. Part of the gift may be simply turning around, and we have those wonderful screens now, so we can turn around and share those images. We can do that throughout the entire portrait shoot. And I guarantee you'll get better and better and better response from your client. And if you read their face, if you see them kind of go sideways, you know, okay, I need to go in another direction. This was an editorial portrait. Does anybody know who Andrew Wyeth was? This is Andrew Wyeth's granddaughter. She's the storyteller. And my job that day was to put her at ease. She's at her grandfather's house. That's the mill house on the granary behind her. And we spent about an hour. And when I say an hour, that's more than I usually get. I'm on my own. I don't have assistants. I don't have light techs. I don't have any of that. I have to do it all on my own. This is lit. It's a pro photo with a softbox, is what my recollection is. It may have been a circular Photech umbrella. I'm using I think it's a D850. It could be the Z9. Again, it's a 70 to 200. My kit is such today that my basic travel kit for almost everything that I do are 2 Nikon Z9s, a 14 to 24, a 24 to 70, a 70 to 200, and a 105 macro, and then 2 FTZ converters. That gives me almost everything other than for sports that I need. If I am going to shoot sports, and I think I'm going to show you some, I know I will, longer lenses there. This gentleman, military, obviously. This was for the University of Pennsylvania's alumni magazine. He goes out and does doctors for good, but he's very, very serious. Simple beauty dish to one side, and a pro photo light. Again, the 110. The 110 gives me the compression that I want, because many, many times that's what I want. That's what I need for my eye, is to compress. But see the shape it gives? See again, the contact with the eye, the moment. This gentleman was the football coach for my opposing team that beat us every year. Every year. One of the finest football coaches in Delaware. And I was given the assignment upon his retirement, which was last year, I guess, to go and photograph him for a magazine. So I got time to spend with Bob. And so again, it's making that connection, bringing up those ideas with him of bringing up games that we played against one another or that he coached against us. Finding ways to tell a story, getting that. And the best compliment that I got out of this picture was his daughter calling me, looking at me, or saying to me, "Oh my God, that's my father," and shedding a tear. Then you know that you've made the connection. Then you know you've found the moment. Then you know you've done something right. This is from a fashion shoot. Every year for the last 10 years, almost, I've had to do a fashion shoot for this one magazine change that I work with. And every year, it's a little bit different. Again, I'm on my own. I typically have 3 models. I have to do 34 looks, and I have 1 day. And it's about a 28-page spread. In this case, I had seen, what was it, Anna Karenina? Did anybody see that movie? And Mario Testino had done these wonderful pictures of Keira Knightley. He used a blue background. Jamie Wyeth always says, and Pablo Picasso said it too, that good artists borrow, great artists steal. So I stole from Mario Testino. The hat was made specifically for the job to mimic the hat that Keira wore in the shoot. The beauty of it was, the woman that made it for me borrowed feathers from another friend of ours. The feathers came from that friend's grandmother when she was in a bordello. They're 100-year-old feathers. And so that was my lead on that. Again, a real big octo to one side, and a 24 to 70. This is Jamie Wyeth. This is Andrew Wyeth's son. This was for a magazine shoot. This is not even 2 weeks old. He's doing a show at the Brandywine River Museum called Unsettled. Jamie's work is different than his father's. It's much more like his grandfather. A lot more color, a lot bolder. He uses this particular green all the time, and one of his assistants painted the room for him with that color. So when I walked in and had 15 minutes to do portraits, I had to put him there. He's not quite comfortable, and I've known him since I was in 4th grade. I've photographed him over and over again, and we had just spent an hour, hour and a half doing an interview because I had to write the story as well. Sometimes you have to do that. But you have to always remember that you're the visual communicator, so you have to come away with the image. There's a large light source outside, and that's the Z9 24 to 70. An earlier picture of Jamie outside. This particular picture is outside his house, Point Lookout, and this image came from his grandfather's work. If you've ever seen Treasure Island, this is Old Blind Pew. So finding artwork to give you that inspiration can be wonderful. Looking at the old masters, because we're not doing anything new, it's just how we do it. Another piece from that particular lookbook shoot, a different year. Lindsay Weller. Dealing with jewelry, dealing with a hat, holding that really bright, bright white hat was a bear. This gentleman is a vintner. He has a small winery in Pennsylvania right on the border. So we got into a conversation, and I won't say that I was drinking wine with him, but I had an iced tea. And during that, I had the camera next to me. And the lights were set up. I knew that at one point we would do some pictures. Again, with a 70 to 200, I stepped back, we kept talking, and he just leaned in to talk to me. And Anthony gave me that. Again for a magazine, again for a profile piece. This was out in Santa Fe, New Mexico. Harmony Romano. Again, eye contact, the light, the shape of her face, the reflection, that moment of reflection. And how it imbues and how you can kind of get past just a straight portrait and how she engages you. And that's part of what you have to think about as a photographer, is not only how you are engaging your subject, but how that subject will engage your viewer. How is that subject going to talk to your reader or your viewer? In some ways, I think she speaks volumes. This was my English teacher. My old high school hired me to do a piece. He retired this year after 50 years. And they hired me to do a piece on a magazine piece on him. He was the theater director as well. And so I made that of Bruce. Most times, what you'll find is that I have eye contact. There's a reason why I have eye contact. I truly believe that all portraits are conversations. Having eye contact makes that conversation a lot more interesting. You may have seen this one before from when I was on stage with Joe McNally. Another portrait, but it's all about the eyes. It's also about the freckles, quite honestly, but it's all about the eyes. This is a musician, good dear friend of mine, John Flynn. This was for an album cover. Again, one light, I'm on my own, 70 to 200. So I've spent a lot of time in Iceland and also in Antarctica and Greenland. I'm just going to go through these kind of quickly because I'm only down a little bit. Again, these are to speak about, this is imagery like the Eyjafjallajökull volcano when it erupted. I was up on it. This is also where Tolkien thought of his idea for Mordor. Many, many times I'm doing pictures of things that won't exist anymore. That ice is gone. This ice is gone because of climate change. As is this. Looking for light, shape, color. I always thought of that as runes. How do I find metaphor? How do I find different meaning in imagery? Now the ice is going away. This for me is a metaphor about climate change. That little moment of first light. This is in Antarctica. Again, Antarctica. We're in a zodiac out in the middle of the ocean, floating amongst the ice. This, I thought, for my trip to Antarctica, is one of my most successful images. And the reason I felt that is this. One, I have the shape, I have the light. To me, the moment is right here, the touch. It's just, for me, it's a special image. I also think in terms of metaphor. So when I see big pieces of ice like this floating in the middle of nowhere, knowing that they're going away, and as we moved away, they turned into tombstones with different light. It says, the Wyeths talk about death images. That's a death image. Or coming home and just touching. Or coming to you. How to make things monumental, different angles, or give things texture. Or just that water drop that for me makes it. That's what this picture's all about. The floating bird. Or castles. Talking about leaving. So I do a lot of horse racing photography, but steeplechase, not flat track. And we have all different things. My job is to photograph the entire race. It's a marketing thing for the race. Young riders. So here I am using long lenses, a 200 to 500, a 180 to 400. The Z9 is perfect for this for me. I also have to photograph the fans and get fashion. 600 f4. I'm out on the track, letting them come to me. And there is nothing like a group of horses thundering at you when you're right next to them. Shooting, again, the young riders in quiet moments. And not so quiet moments. How do I find different ways to shoot them? Remotes. Auto capture today on the Z9 is a beautiful thing for this. coming down the stretch. This is this year at the Pennsylvania Hunt Cup. The thing that got me about this particular picture is knowing the anatomy of the horse, knowing that there is a bit of an opening in the nostril, in the skull. It was late afternoon light, and all of a sudden the nose is lit up. And instead I have a metaphor of fire. The agony of defeat, in a way. Peak action. That undershot. This can get a little bit seductive. You can make it over and over again. It doesn't always happen. But when you make it and you get it right, boy, is it fun. And that monumental shot coming down the stretch. Or a jockey when he wins his first race. And again, that shot, but showing the race course. Cuba. A couple of things from Cuba. Early light, finding ways to illustrate what it's like. So if you're going to be a travel photographer, how do I do that? Finding moments in color, that just little touch, reaching out. It was all about color for me and shape. In this way, I was able to do a portrait of him but not show his face. Quiet Marlborough Man moment. But because of the wonderful color of the walls, I win. Handheld 10-second exposure. Engagement, color, shape, form, moment. And our friend with the rooster. Or Our Lady in the Square in Havana. This next bit are groups of imagery from my 30-year project with Mr. Stewart's Cheshire Foxhounds. It's an equestrian avocation. It's a foxhound. We don't really hunt anymore. We haven't for decades. This is one of the first images I made. It's on film. It was probably with an f2. But it was finding light and finding a moment for me. And it led me along a path that's lasted for more than 30 years and has helped me make myself a better photographer. It's something that I would encourage you all to do, is find that personal project. Going in with hounds. And they've given me this gift of truly having, the horse's name is With Anticipation. So what better way could I do than photograph him in a fog? I'll move along. Finding line, finding shape, finding people. Trying to get close. Seeing where you might not normally see. Finding moments. Still shoot the action. And the quiet moments of going away. Portraits. So it's how can I do what I do best for myself? Athleticism. Career in knives. Again, a 70 to 200. The 110 macro. This was, for me, a very important picture because it led me to how to properly describe the members of our field. Another image just like that, using the light to create the shape, to create the texture, to create the moment, and imbue it with spirit. Our countryside. I had looked at this hill for years and finally found an image. Back to Wyeth again. His last day, bringing his hounds home. We're alone out in the countryside. And our last. Thank you all so much. I really appreciate the time that you gave me.